The night was quiet on Evan's small farm at the edge of the colony zone. Only the wind moved through the dry grass, whispering against the fence posts. He had just finished fixing the old generator when his communicator flashed blue. An incoming holo message. The sender name made his heart jump. Kale, his old alien friend from the Orion frontier. Evan wiped his hands on his shirt and opened the message. A flickering image appeared above the device. Kale, wearing his battle armor, eyes sharp but tired. "Evan," Kale said in his low, calm voice. "I'm going on a long mission. I need a favor. Take care of my partner while I'm gone." "You're the only one I can trust," Evan frowned. "Partner?" He imagined Kale meant some small alien creature, maybe a pet or companion animal. Kale had once kept something that looked like a glowing catfish, so the idea didn't seem strange. Still, Kyle's face looked serious. The message ended with coordinates and one final line. "Keep her safe. I'll return when I can." The signal faded. For a few seconds, the room was silent except for the generator's hum. Evan laughed softly and shook his head. "A pet, huh? Sure, Kale, I can handle that." The next morning, he followed the coordinates to a nearby field. A delivery beacon blinked red in the tall grass. Hovering above it, a transport drone slowly lowered a large cargo pod, silver and sealed tight. As it landed with a heavy thud, dust swirled around its base. Evan approached, half expecting something furry to leap out once he opened it. "Let's see what you've got for me, Kale," he muttered, pressing the unlock panel. The pod hissed open with a sharp burst of air. What he saw made his breath stop. Inside the pod lay a figure, a tall woman, not human, wearing dark metallic armor etched with alien symbols. Her silver-blue skin reflected the morning light. Long strands of pale hair spilled over her shoulder, and her eyes were closed. She looked unconscious, but her chest rose and fell in slow, steady breaths. For a long moment, Evan didn't move. His first thought was that Kale had sent the wrong container. But then he noticed something etched into the armor near her collar, a mark shaped like Kyle's clan symbol. His voice was barely a whisper. "Partner." He meant her? The woman stirred, her eyes flickering open. They were bright violet, glowing faintly even in daylight. She looked confused, then alarmed. In a blink, she sat up, hand reaching toward a blade attached to her thigh. Evan jumped back, raising both hands. "Hey, easy. I'm not your enemy." Her voice came out low and sharp. "Where is Kale?" Evan stammered. He sent me a message. Said to take care of you while he's gone." He showed her the holo message still playing from his communicator. Kale's voice echoed softly. "Take care of my partner." The woman's eyes narrowed as she watched, and slowly she lowered her weapon. Her breathing steadied. "Kyle trusted you?" she asked. "I guess so," Evan said, still unsure what to make of her. "I'm Evan, you're his partner." She looked away for a second. "Yes, my name is Sarai." Her tone was firm, but there was pain hidden beneath it. She tried to stand and stumbled, catching herself on the pod's edge. Evan stepped forward instinctively, but she waved him off. "I am fine. You don't look fine," he said. "You're hurt." She didn't answer. Instead, she scanned the sky with sharp, alert eyes, as if expecting danger to drop out of the clouds. "We cannot stay here," she murmured. "They might have tracked the delivery drone." "They?" Evan asked, but Sarai didn't respond. She pressed something on her armor, and a faint energy shimmered around her body. Some kind of shield. Evan sighed, glancing back toward his house. "All right. Look, you can rest in my barn for now. It's safe. We'll figure this out when you're better." She hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Very well. Lead the way." They walked toward the farmhouse in silence. Sarai moved slowly but with grace, her steps light and precise. Evan noticed faint burn marks on her armor, scars from a recent battle. Whoever she wasn't some fragile being. When they reached the barn, Evan opened the door and motioned her inside. The air smelled of hay and metal. She scanned every corner before sitting against a wall. Her head tilted slightly as she studied him. "You are human," she said softly. "Last I checked," he replied with a nervous smile. Kale had once told him that humans were unpredictable to most alien species. Too emotional, too loyal, too dangerous when angry. Evan wondered what Sarai saw in him now. A threat, a caretaker, or just another unknown creature she'd been forced to trust. Later that night, as rain began to fall, Evan stood at the window watching the lights of the drone beacon fade in the distance. He replayed Kale's message again and again, trying to understand. Why would Kale send his partner to him? Why not someone from his own people? Behind him, in the barn, faint light glowed through the cracks, Sarai's armor pulsing softly in the dark like a living thing. She sat still, silent, watching the storm outside. Evan sighed, half smiling. A pet, huh, Kale? You really owe me an explanation. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley, and far above the clouds, unseen by human eyes, a group of alien ships drifted silently through orbit, searching for one missing warrior. The storm had only just begun. Morning light filtered through the cracks of the barn, falling over dust and straw. Evan stepped inside quietly, carrying a tray with warm food and a metal cup of water. He expected to find Sarai still asleep, but instead she was already awake, standing near the open door watching the sunrise. Her armor shimmered faintly, reflecting soft gold. You didn't eat anything last night, Evan said carefully, placing the tray on a wooden box. Thought you might be hungry. Sarai turned her head slightly, her expression unreadable. I do not eat human food. Then what do you eat? He asked, half teasing. She hesitated, then replied flatly, nutrient compounds. Protein infusions. Nothing you can cook on a stove. Evan shrugged. Well, that's a shame. My cooking's the best thing in this galaxy. For the first time, her lips twitched. Not a full smile, but close enough to make him pause. She reached for the cup of water and took a small sip. This will do. Evan watched her movements, controlled, precise, like a soldier who never relaxed. Even in silence, there was tension around her, like she was always ready to fight or flee. So, Sarai, he said, leaning against a post, Kale called you his partner. What does that mean exactly? You two work together? Her eyes shifted toward him. We shared a bond forged in battle. He saved my life once. I owed him my protection in return. That's not what we humans call a partner, he said softly. Your kind ties that word to emotion, she replied, voice steady. For us it means duty. Evan nodded slowly. Duty, huh? You sound like someone who hasn't taken a break in a long time. Sarai didn't answer. She was looking at the open field beyond the barn. Something feels wrong, she murmured. There are watchers nearby. Evan frowned. Watchers? Before he could ask more, she lifted her arm. A small lens on her gauntlet glowed red, scanning the air. Drone fragments, scouting devices, she whispered. They found this location. Evan's stomach dropped. You mean those people after Kale? She nodded. If they tracked the cargo pod, they know I'm here. Then we need to hide you, he said quickly. Follow me. Sarai hesitated, glancing back toward the barn. I do not run. Well, I don't fight aliens for breakfast, Evan shot back. You're hurt, remember? If they come here, they'll kill you and me. For a moment she looked ready to argue, but then she saw the seriousness in his eyes. Without another word, she followed him out through the back door and across the field toward his storm cellar. The air was damp from last night's rain and mud clung to her boots. When they reached the cellar, Evan pulled open the heavy door. Down here. It's shielded with lead. Scanners can't see through it. Sarai stepped inside the narrow space, ducking under the low ceiling. The small underground room was lined with old supplies, food, tools, blankets. She examined everything carefully, her sharp eyes scanning every corner before sitting down against the wall. You trust easily, she said suddenly, a strange trait for your species. I could say the same about you, Evan replied, crossing his arms. Her eyes flicked toward him again. I don't trust you. I'm only resting because Kale trusted you. Evan smiled faintly. That's good enough for now. For a few minutes, silence filled the small cellar. Then Evan spoke again, quieter this time. What happened to him, Sarai? Why isn't Kale back yet? She looked down at her hands. His mission was against a raider fleet. They wanted control of a warp gate near the Vega Rift. Kyle went to stop them. Evan studied her face. Beneath the calm expression, there was grief she tried to hide. You think something went wrong? I don't think, she said softly. I know, a heavy pause followed. The only sound was the soft hum of her armor's faint power core. Finally, she added, if Kale is gone, they will come for me next. I hold his codes, his knowledge. His enemies will want it. Evan's chest tightened. Then you're not safe anywhere, Sarai nodded. Not even on your world. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his neck. Then we make it safe. We'll figure it out together. She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to see what kind of creature would say such a thing. Finally, she looked away. You risk too much for someone you don't know. Evan smiled faintly. Kel once saved me too. Guess I'm just returning the favor. For the first time, she didn't argue. Outside, the wind shifted. Far above, unseen ships moved through the clouds, searching, scanning, closing in. Sarai lifted her head, eyes narrowing. They're closer than I thought. Evan tightened his grip on the cellar door handle. Then we better be ready. The tension in the air thickened. The human and the alien, strangers bound by one man's last request, sat quietly in the half-dark, waiting for whatever would come next. And in that silence, for the first time, Sarai whispered something that almost sounded like trust. Do not open the door until I say so. Evan nodded. You got it. The sound of distant engines rumbled overhead, low and heavy, like thunder warning of the storm that was yet to come. Night had fallen again over Evan's quiet farm, but the silence now felt heavier, like the calm before a storm. The old generator hummed softly in the distance, a steady sound that used to comfort him. Now it only reminded him how fragile everything was. He sat near the window, a cup of cold coffee in his hand, trying to stay awake. Every few minutes he glanced toward the barn where Sarai was resting. She had refused to stay in the house, saying she needed distance. Evan didn't push her. He could tell she wasn't used to being helped. Outside, lightning flashed in the far-off hills, lighting up the fields for a split second. And in that brief moment, he thought he saw something. Shadows moving across the grass. His hand tightened around the cup. Probably my imagination, he told himself, though a part of him didn't believe it. He decided to check on Sarai just to be sure. The night air was cool as he stepped out, carrying a lantern to light the path. The barn doors creaked softly as he pushed them open. Sarai, he whispered. No answer, only the sound of rain dripping through a crack in the roof. The faint blue glow of her armor pulsed from the far corner. Evan walked closer and froze. Sarai was kneeling on the ground, her armor half open, revealing a deep wound running along her side. The glow from her blood was faint but real, like liquid light spilling from a broken shell. Sarai, he breathed, startled. You're hurt, badly. Her head snapped toward him, eyes sharp. You shouldn't be here. I should have been here hours ago, he said firmly. Why didn't you tell me you were bleeding? I don't need your help, she snapped, trying to seal the wound with a small device. But the device flickered weakly and died. She winced, her jaw tightening. Evan moved closer. That thing's dead. Let me help. You can't, she said, voice hard. Your tools, your medicine, they won't work on me. Maybe not, he said, kneeling beside her anyway. But blood is blood and pain is pain. Pain is, I can at least stop the bleeding. Before she could protest, he tore a clean strip from his shirt and pressed it gently against her side. The glow beneath his hands flickered brighter, and she gasped softly, eyes wide with confusion. You're crazy, she whispered. Maybe, he said, but you're still alive, so let me be crazy a little longer. For a few seconds, there was only silence between them. Sarai's breathing slowed as he worked carefully, cleaning the wound and wrapping it tight. Her skin was warm beneath the alien metal, almost human. When he finished, she looked at him, not with her usual suspicion, but something else. Curiosity, maybe even gratitude. No human has ever touched me before, she said quietly. Evan met her gaze. Then they've been missing out on good company. For a moment she almost smiled, but then her expression darkened. You shouldn't have done that. Why not? Because now they'll smell my blood on you, she said. He frowned. What are you talking about? Before she could answer, the barn lights flickered. A low hum rolled through the air like the buzz of insects, but deeper, metallic. Sarai tensed immediately. Drones, she hissed. They found us. Evan's heart pounded. He ran to the barn doors and peered outside. In the distance, small, red lights moved through the fog, search drones, scanning the fields with beams of white light. Stay here, he whispered. No, Sarai said firmly, struggling to her feet. They are hunting me. If they find this place, you die too. Then we fight, Evan said, reaching for an old plasma tool hanging on the wall. It's not a weapon, but it can make one hell of a spark. Sarai tilted her head, surprised. You're not leaving? He looked back at her. You think I'd just run away? Kyle trusted me. That means I protect you, no matter what comes. Her eyes softened slightly. You sound like him. The drones grew louder now, their red eyes cutting through the darkness. Sarai raised her damaged weapon, steady despite her wound. Evan crouched beside her, holding his tool like a makeshift blaster. One drone swooped close to the barn door, scanning. Sarai's arm shot forward, firing a burst of plasma that sliced it clean in half. Sparks rained down, lighting up the hay. Evan stomped out a small fire, coughing through the smoke. They'll know we're here now, she warned. Then we'd better make it count, he said. For a minute, time slowed. Human and alien stood side by side, two strangers fighting against the dark. When the next drone appeared, Evan triggered the generator to overload, flooding the area with blinding light. The machine spun out, sensors blinded. Sarai used the moment to destroy two more before the rest retreated into the mist. The air smelled of burnt metal and ozone. When silence finally returned, Evan's hands were shaking. Guess we passed the test, he muttered. Sarai turned to him, breathing hard. You risked your life for me again. He shrugged. You do the same, right? She didn't answer, but the look in her eyes said everything. As rain began to fall again, Sarai stepped closer, lowering her weapon. You should sleep, she said softly. Tomorrow they'll send more. Evan nodded, exhausted. Then tomorrow we'll be ready. And as he left the barn, he caught one last glimpse of her, kneeling in the dim light, her armor cracked, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She looked less like a warrior now and more like something fragile trying to stay strong. He knew one thing for sure. This was no ordinary favor. It was the beginning of something far bigger than either of them understood. Morning came gray and heavy with fog. The storm had passed, but the air felt charged, like the world itself was holding its breath. Evan stood outside the barn, watching mist roll over his fields. Every few seconds he thought he heard faint hums in the distance, machines maybe, or ghosts of the night before. Sarai stepped out behind him, armor patched crudely with metal strips from his workshop. Her wound was sealed now, but she moved stiffly. Even hurt, she looked powerful, like a statue carved for war. They'll return, she said quietly. The scouts last night were only the first wave. Evan didn't argue. He'd seen the drones himself, how they moved, how they searched. Then we need to be ready, he said. I've got old farming drones I can rig for defense, maybe buy us time. Sarai glanced at him, a strange expression crossing her face. You're just a farmer, she said softly. Yeah, he replied, and this farmer doesn't like uninvited guests. She tilted her head, as if studying him again, then gave a small nod. Very well, human. We fight together. For the next few hours, they worked in silence. Evan rewired his machines, crop sprayers, harvest drones, and the old irrigation system, turning them into a rough defense network. Sarai watched him, with curiosity, occasionally stepping in to adjust an energy coil or attach a shield emitter scavenged from her broken armor. It wasn't much, but it was something. By noon, the fog began to lift, revealing the wide valley around them. The quiet stretched on, too long, too still. Evan's nerves buzzed. He turned toward Sarai. Maybe they gave up. No, she said immediately. They're circling, waiting for us to relax. How do you know? Her eyes narrowed. Because that's what I would do. Before he could reply, the sky broke open with a thunderous roar. 3 black ships dropped through the clouds, sleek and angular, glowing red at their cores. They moved like predators. Inside now, Sarai shouted, pulling him toward the barn. The first ship fired. A pulse of blue energy slammed into the ground near the house, shaking the earth and sending dust flying. Evan stumbled, heart pounding. Those aren't drones, he shouted over the noise. They're hunters, Sarai said, gripping her weapon. They've come for me, and anyone who stands beside me. Evan looked at her. Then they're going to regret it. The barn became their fortress. Evan triggered his makeshift defenses. The irrigation drones lifted off, spraying thick clouds of mist to block scanners. Sarai took position near the door, aiming upward. The first ship swooped low, scanning. Wait for it, Evan said. When the scanners hit the mist, he fired the old generator's power surge. Lightning arced across the air, catching one of the ships mid-scan. It jerked violently, engines sputtering before crashing into a nearby field in a shower of sparks. Sarai turned to him, eyes wide. How did you— Electric fences and stubbornness, he said, panting. The victory was short-lived. The remaining two ships opened fire, sending energy bolts ripping through the air. Wood splintered, and part of the barn's roof exploded. Evan ducked, shielding his face as debris rained down. Sarai moved like lightning, returning fire with precision shots that forced the hunters to climb higher. They're calling for reinforcements, she shouted. Then we finish this fast. Evan yelled back. He sprinted to the back of the barn, pulling a fuel line from his tractor and connecting it to the harvester drone. If I can overload this thing, we can give them a real surprise. Sarai turned just in time to see him rigging the device. Evan, that will kill you. Only if it doesn't work, he said, forcing a grin. Now get ready to run. He pressed the ignition, sending a surge of energy into the fuel line. The harvester drone shot up into the air, its frame glowing from within. As the two hunter ships swooped low for a final strike, the drone exploded in a brilliant burst. An artificial sun tearing the sky apart. The shockwave knocked both ships off balance. One spiraled down into the nearby hills. The other lost altitude, engines screaming before retreating into the clouds. Evan hit the ground hard, his ears ringing. Smoke filled the air. When the light faded, he felt a firm hand grab his arm. Sarai was beside him, pulling him to his feet. Her eyes glowed faintly in the haze. You're insane, she said softly. He coughed, managing a weak smile. You're welcome. For a moment, neither spoke. Around them, the farm was half destroyed, smoke rising, soil burned black. But they were alive. Sarai looked at the wreckage of one of the hunter ships. They'll report back, she murmured. Next time, there will be more. Then we'll find a way to stop them, Evan said. I'm not letting anyone else die for Kale's war. She turned toward him, studying his face as if seeing him for the first time. You speak as though you are one of us. Maybe I am now, he said quietly. You're not fighting alone anymore. The wind carried away the smoke, revealing the wreckage scattered across the valley. The battle was over, but the war had just begun. Sarai stood tall beside him, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Kale was right, she said under her breath. You humans are impossible. Evan smiled faintly. You say that like it's a bad thing. That night, as the fires died down and the stars returned, Sarai remained awake, watching the sky, waiting for the next signal. Evan slept nearby, his arm bandaged from shrapnel. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Sarai felt something unfamiliar. Safety, not born from armor or weapons, but from trust. She looked at him and whispered softly, Kyle, you chose well. And high above, unseen to both, another signal blinked to life among the stars. Someone, somewhere, had heard the fight. The hunters would return. The sun rose over the valley like a quiet promise after war. Smoke still drifted from the blackened fields, and half of Evan's barn lay in ruins. But the sky was calm again, blue, clean, endless. For the first time in days, he could hear birds singing. Evan stood outside, holding a mug of coffee, staring at the wrecked hunter ship that had crashed in his field. He should have been terrified or angry or exhausted, but mostly he was amazed. Somehow he and an alien soldier had survived a battle meant for armies. Sarai emerged from the barn, her movements slower now. She had removed most of her damaged armor and wore a plain shirt and utility pants from Evan's old storage trunk. The clothes didn't quite fit, but they made her look strangely human. Coffee? Evan offered, holding out the mug. She tilted her head. That is the bitter human drink, yes? That's one way to describe it. She accepted the mug, sniffed it cautiously, and took a small sip. Her face tightened instantly. Disgusting, she said flatly. Evan laughed. You'll get used to it. Builds character. Sarai glanced at him sideways. You already have too much character. Over the next few days, they worked to repair the damage. Sarai's strength made rebuilding faster. She lifted heavy beams, welded metal with her palm emitters, and helped Evan reprogram the surviving drones. At first, she spoke little. Every time Evan tried to start a conversation, she would answer in short, clipped words. But slowly that changed. One evening, while repairing the fence, Evan asked her, "So how'd you and Kale meet? You said he saved you once." Sarai paused, looking out toward the hills. The wind tugged at her pale hair. "It was during the siege of Varan's Belt. My unit was ambushed. He was the only one who came back for me." "That sounds like him," Evan said softly. "Always running toward danger instead of away from it." She nodded slowly. "He was foolish, but loyal. Like you." Evan smiled faintly. "I'll take that as a compliment." "You shouldn't," she replied, but there was warmth in her tone this time. Later that night, the two sat near a small campfire behind the barn. Stars filled the sky, bright and sharp. Sarai watched them in silence for a long time before speaking again. "Your world is quiet," she said. "No fleets above, no watchtowers, no commands shouted in the dark." Evan poked at the fire. "We used to have wars too. Guess we just got tired of them." She tilted her head. "And when war finds you again?" He met her eyes. "Then we do what we did yesterday, we fight together." Something softened in her expression. For once her voice lost its edge. "Together," she repeated as if testing the word. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. In the days that followed, Sarai began learning small things about human life. She asked about the strange tools in his workshop, about cooking, about music. One morning she found Evan playing an old song through his holo projector. "What is that?" she asked. "Just an old Earth song." "It helps me think." She listened quietly, eyes distant. "It sounds alive." "It's called blues," he said. "We play it when we feel sad but don't want to give up." "Strange," she murmured. "In my world, sadness is weakness." Evan smiled. "Here, it's just proof you still care." Something in her gaze changed then, like she was seeing the world through new light. But even peace carried shadows. One afternoon, Sarai found a small metallic shard buried near the wreckage of the hunter ship. When she picked it up, a blue hologram flickered above it. A transmission pulse. "Evan," she called sharply. "They've sent a distress signal." His stomach dropped. "Meaning?" "Meaning they know I'm still alive." Evan rubbed the back of his neck. "Then we don't have much time." Sarai looked at him, her eyes calm but heavy with guilt. "You could still leave. If they come again, they won't just target me." "I'm not leaving," he said without hesitation. "You think Kale would have wanted that?" She looked away, her jaw tightening. "Kale would have told me not to get attached." "Well, too late for that," Evan said quietly. Her gaze flicked to him again, sharp and uncertain. There was something in his tone that caught her off guard, something honest. She didn't reply, but her silence said more than words ever could. That night rain fell softly on the roof. Evan lay on his cot inside the house, half asleep, when he heard soft footsteps. The door opened quietly and Sarai stood there, wrapped in a blanket, her usual armor gone. "I cannot sleep," she said. "Every sound reminds me of ships coming." Evan sat up. "You're safe here." "I know," she whispered, "but my mind doesn't believe it." He nodded slowly. "Then sit. Sometimes silence helps." She hesitated, then took a seat near the small heater. For a long while, neither spoke. The rain's rhythm filled the quiet space. Finally, Sarai spoke again, her voice almost human. "Kel once told me humans love with reckless hearts. I did not understand then." Evan looked at her gently. "And now?" She met his eyes, the glow in them softer than before. "Now I think I'm beginning to." The firelight flickered between them, warm and quiet. Outside the storm passed, but inside the small farmhouse, something stronger began to grow, a bond not born of duty, but of choice. And in the silence of that moment, the alien and the human finally began to understand what it meant to truly belong. The next morning began with the sound of static. Not thunder, not engines, just a faint broken hum echoing through the radio on Evan's workbench. He froze mid-step, a wrench still in his hand. The radio had been dead for months, burnt out during the first storm. Now it was alive again, whispering through the silence. "Sarai," he shouted. She was outside, inspecting the wrecked hunter ship. When she heard the urgency in his voice, she rushed inside, boots hitting the wooden floor. Her eyes glowed faintly, scanning the room. What is it? Evan pointed to the radio. It just started doing this. The static grew louder, forming short bursts of digital tones. Sarai leaned closer, her brow tightening. That's not random noise, she said softly. It's a coded transmission, our military format. Evan blinked. From who? Her expression hardened. Kyle. The name hit like a heartbeat. Evan's throat went dry. You mean he's alive? Sarai didn't answer right away. She grabbed a small lens from her belt and connected it to the radio. Blue light projected across the wall, turning static into symbols, then into an image. A face flickered into focus. Kyle. He looked battered, scarred, his armor scorched. Behind him, smoke filled the cockpit of a damaged ship. Sarai. His voice cracked through static, broken but clear enough. If you're hearing this. I didn't make it to the gate. Sarai's breath hitched. Her hands tightened around the projector. The enemy, Kyle continued, coughing. They were waiting. I destroyed their command ship, but my reactor's failing. I won't reach you. Evan felt a pit form in his stomach. Sarai's face stayed still, but her jaw trembled slightly. Kale went on, his tone softening. You'll be hunted. They'll think you have my codes. You must survive. And if you find the human, trust him. He's not like the others. Evan's eyes widened. Kale's final words came out like a fading breath. Protect each other. That's what partners do. The screen went dark. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Only the faint hum of the generator filled the silence. Sarai stood motionless, her face blank, her eyes shimmering faintly in the blue glow. Then, without a word, she turned and walked outside. Evan followed her. The wind had picked up again, carrying dust across the burnt fields. Sarai stood near the wreckage, staring at the sky. He's gone, she said flatly. Kale is dead. Evan stepped closer. You don't know that for sure. She turned to him sharply. You heard the message. His reactor was failing. There is no rescue. He's gone. Her voice broke on the last word, and she turned away. Evan wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in his throat. She had lost more than a commander. She had lost the only link to her old life. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. He trusted you, he said quietly. And he trusted me. We can still honor that. Sarai didn't move for a moment. Then she whispered almost to herself. He told me once that humans find meaning in loss. I never understood how. Evan looked at her. We don't find meaning in it. We survive it and make sure it wasn't for nothing. She turned toward him slowly. Then we keep moving. That night, Sarai sat on the hill overlooking the valley, Kale's message replaying in her mind. The stars shimmered above, cold and endless. Evan joined her, carrying 2 cups of water. I rerouted the ship's core, he said quietly. The energy cell still works. Maybe it can boost a signal back into orbit. We can warn someone, maybe your people. She nodded faintly. Or it will tell the hunters exactly where we are. He shrugged. You always say I take too many risks. A small smile tugged at her lips. You learned that from Kale. Guess he rubbed off on both of us. They sat in silence for a long while, the night wind brushing against them. Finally, Sarai asked softly, Why do you keep helping me, Evan? You owe me nothing. Your home is ruined, your life changed. Why stay? He looked up at the stars. Because when Kale called me his friend, I didn't take it lightly. And now you're part of that promise. She turned her gaze toward him, studying his face with quiet intensity. Human loyalty. It frightens me, he chuckled softly. That makes 2 of us. Later that night, they worked side by side, setting up the power core to send one final signal into space. The device glowed softly as it activated, humming with energy. Sarai keyed in a sequence of alien glyphs. It will transmit Kale's last coordinates and his warning. If anyone from my world hears it, they'll know what happened. Evan nodded. And if the hunters hear it first? Then they'll find us, she said simply. He met her eyes. Then we'll be ready. The signal pulsed upward, a beam of pale light cutting into the sky. It shimmered for a moment before fading into the stars. Sarai watched it disappear, her expression unreadable. Then she whispered something in her native tongue, soft, mournful, like a prayer. Evan didn't ask what it meant. Some things were meant to stay sacred. As the night deepened, she finally turned to him and said, Kale would have liked you. Evan smiled faintly. Let's just hope I live long enough to deserve that. For the first time since she'd arrived, Sarai smiled back, a small, genuine curve of her lips. The light from the crashed ship flickered once more before dying completely, and in that darkness only the two of them remained, two survivors bound by one man's final wish. Dawn broke gently over the scarred valley. The smoke was gone and the air smelled of rain and metal. For the first time in weeks, the horizon looked calm. The wrecked hunter ship sat half buried in the field, its black hull gleaming faintly under the morning light, like a reminder of everything that had been lost and everything that had changed. Evan stood near the fence line, a rough blueprint in his hands. He was rebuilding again. The barn's frame rose piece by piece, steadied by human hands and alien strength. Sarai worked beside him, silent but steady. She no longer wore her battle armor, just a dark jacket, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back. She looked different now. Softer. Not less powerful, but more alive. "You don't have to help," Evan said as he hammered another nail into the beam. "You've done enough already." Sarai tightened a bolt on the metal brace. "You helped me survive. I help you rebuild. That is balance," he smiled. "Balance, huh? I like that." She looked up at the sky for a moment, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the light. Kale used to say balance is rare in war. Maybe now I finally understand what he meant. Over the next few days, the world began to feel less like a battlefield and more like a home again. Sarai adapted quickly, fixing generators, repairing machinery, even planting crops. She moved with quiet purpose, learning human tools and habits like she was rewriting her own code. One afternoon, Evan found her sitting by the old water pump, watching dragonflies dance over the pond. "You okay?" he asked. She turned to him slowly. "Your world is strange. So much life, even after destruction. That's how we are," he said. "We fall but we rebuild," she nodded faintly. "We were taught only to conquer, not to heal." Evan sat beside her. "Maybe this is your chance to learn that." There was a long pause. Then she said softly, "You think Kale would want me to stay here?" He looked at her. "I think he wanted you to find peace. Doesn't matter where." That night the stars were clearer than they'd ever been. Evan sat by the rebuilt barn sipping coffee while Sarai inspected the sky with a small handheld scanner. "Anything?" he asked. She shook her head. "No signals, no ships. No one's coming." Evan exhaled, half relief, half sadness. "Guess that means we're on our own now." Sarai lowered the scanner, her gaze distant. "On my world, being alone was considered failure. Here, it feels different," he smiled gently. "Here, being alone just means you get to choose who's worth keeping close." She studied him for a moment, then said quietly, "You're not what I expected a human to be." "Good or bad?" "Unpredictable," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. Evan chuckled. "I'll take that." Days turned into weeks. Together, they restored what they could and left what couldn't be saved. The wrecked hunter ship became part of the land, a monument, not a scar. Sometimes, when the wind blew just right, it sang faintly, like metal remembering the stars. Sarai grew quieter, but not distant. There was a calmness about her now, a peace she hadn't known in years. One morning she brought Evan a small metallic crest, shaped like Kale's clan symbol. "He would have wanted you to have this," she said. Evan turned it over in his hands, the metal warm from her touch. "It feels heavy. It carries his code," she explained. "In our culture, that means trust. You carry his legacy now." He looked up at her. "Then I'll make sure it means something." Her lips curved slightly. "It already does." One evening, as the sun dipped low, Sarai stood at the edge of the field, watching fireflies rise from the grass. Evan walked up beside her, hands in his pockets. "Thinking about leaving?" he asked quietly. She didn't look at him. "I was built for battle, not for farming. Every instinct tells me to keep moving, to run before peace feels too heavy. And what does your heart say?" She hesitated. "It says, stay," Evan smiled. "Then maybe that's the one you should listen to." She turned her head slightly, eyes glimmering in the orange light. "You humans make it sound simple." "It's never simple," he said softly. "But it's real." A long silence followed. Then Sarai extended her hand, open and steady. "Kyle once said partnership is built on trust, not command. I never understood it. Until now." Evan looked at her hand, then clasped it firmly. "Then I guess we're partners now." Her fingers tightened around his, strong but gentle. "Yes," she said. "Partners." That night she stood outside the house gazing up at the stars. For the first time she didn't look toward them with longing, but with acceptance. Her voice was quiet, carried by the wind. "Kale," she whispered, "you were right. Humanity is chaos, but it is also hope." Inside the house, Evan watched her from the window, the faint smile on her face illuminated by starlight. The war had taken everything from both of them, but in its ashes, something new had begun to grow. Not human, not alien, something in between. A partnership not built by command or fear, but by choice. And as the night deepened, the last fragment of Kale's signal faded from the skies, replaced by a new rhythm, one heartbeat shared by two worlds learning at last to understand each other.